welcome to Find It on the last day of May. We're already almost done with May. So glad you guys are here to join Scott Schilling and I can't wait for you to meet him. He has amazing stories. He's super inspirational. He's a man of faith, integrity, and so much more. I'm going to read a little bit about him. He's known as the authentic connector, which he's very genuine. I know that for a fact. He's a media host, executive coach, international trainer, speaker, author. Woo, let me get my breath. That sucks. What now? I think this is his latest book, but I believe he's written like 18 books. So he knows a thing or two about pen to paper and a whole lot more. You think I already said everything about him? You wait. Hang tight. We're going to show his intro, and Scott will be right back with us. Hello, Scott Schilling. How are you tonight?
I'm fabulous, Debbie. Thank you for having me here. This is going to be fun.
I'm going to tell you, I am so grateful for you being here. Let's tell everybody how we found one another. We found one another on a different podcast Tuesday evenings with Lynn and Scott, as we all see it. And through this experience of being on a podcast together on screen, I've learned a little bit about you. I didn't know the half of it because you don't really talk about yourself. And we're on there talking about topics that you are so calm, cool, collected. And when you speak, you know you really have something to say. And I just thought, I really like this guy. I want him on Find It. Then when I started reading about you, I was like, oh my gosh, he's a total rock star. What? And so I just genuinely like you. And then to know all your accolades and everything you have done and you're currently doing, I feel very blessed for you to be here. So thank you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm honored to be here. We're going to have some fun together.
Oh,
here.
yeah, we are. And I'm changing it up a little bit tonight, you guys. Typically at the end of my podcast, I am excited. That was my sister that came in. Toward the end of the podcast, I ask every guest one question. And that one question is, what have you found in life that has inspired you that you can share with us to help us find it too? And after reading about you, I just really want to know, I think you've probably found a lot. Can you answer that question right in the beginning and we'll go from there?
Yeah, I think for me, the answer has been perseverance. It's really, a continued effort, when you face difficulties, when you face the F word, which I don't use, one called failure, or quite frankly, when you face opposition, right? It's, if you take it almost biblically, it's about steadfastness. It's about coming up against the things that you come up against and realize that you're just up against them. So now you either got to go up, over, under, around. It's in the way. Get it out of the way and go from there. It's not always easy, not trying to suggest it is. But the fact is, if you persevere through something, sometimes people say, well, isn't that just persistence? No, persistence is just doing something over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
It's more intentional. It's a desire to get through. The best way to get done is to go through. And so how do you get through it? Find the different things that allow you to do that going forward.
Can you explain to us or tell us a story about something that you've had to persevere through that can help us understand your story a little bit more?
Well, that's actually the latest book, That Sucks, What Now, really tells multiple stories like that. When I was 19 years old, I was destined for the NFL. I was on my way until I completely severed my Achilles tendon on my right foot, which was my kicking foot. I was a kicker and punter headed for the NFL. And when they brought me in, and the doctor, I was pretty drugged up at the time, and the doctor said, Scott, you'll never play sports again. You'll probably never walk without a limp, and you're kind of screwed.
Mm.
And my response, again, being very drugged up, was, sew me up, I'll be back. There might have been a few other words in there as well.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is 75 days later, I was on the field starting to work out.
Wow.
And so, sometimes, and it's funny, 20 years later, I saw him in the locker room at the Alamo Bowl. I took my kids to the game down in San Antonio. And I said, Dr. Albright, I don't know that I ever got a chance to thank you. I've won 10 racquetball championships since. I had 4 NFL tryouts afterwards. I did, blah, 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 blah. And he said, I have never seen somebody so pissed that they got hurt.
Yeah.
And he said, I appreciate the accolades you're giving me for putting you back together. But he said, it was really your mindset, your heart set, your internal desire to come back that brought you back. And so it's cool when you talk to somebody like that, because he had seen, he's seen every injury there was and everything. But what the lesson taught me is, even though I had the tryouts and I had the opportunities, it was like, I don't want to do this.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like who I became when I was doing that.
Wow.
When I was playing ball, you grow up as a good kid, nice kid, and all of a sudden you're literally the rock star at 18 years old.
Yeah.
I was at the University of Iowa. There are no professional sports in Iowa. So if you played Iowa football or you wrestled at Iowa, you were the equivalent of a professional athlete.
Yeah.
And I got to say that I did not handle that well. I had never had it happen before. I don't know that you get trained up to learn that. But, you're walking to class and a little kid comes up and gets your autograph. I mean, that's just not normal.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went from hero to zero in the matter of a second.
Mm-hmm.
And while I would have preferred it not to happen, it was one of the best and earliest lessons I had that has now served me the rest of my life.
That brings up a really good point about seeing like movie stars, kid Hollywood actors and actresses, and many of them kind of go off the rails. And it's a lot to handle as a kid and an adult, but especially as a kid, I guess you could understand that a little bit more,
Well, yeah, it's one of those things that, there's no class on how to handle that. There's no, nobody says, oh, by the way, the fans in Iowa are so fabulous so that Alamo Bowl game, I'll give you an example. The Alamo Bowl game that I talked to the doctor at was 20 years after I played. And I'm there with my kids. And my son's got my white jersey on, my daughter's got my black jersey on. And we're sitting in the stands, and the people next to us looked at the name on the back of their jerseys, whispered to each other, looked at the names again, whispered to each other. They kept on doing it, and they finally said, damn, it was so good when you came back after your injury. It was just really awesome. And they started quoting my stats to me.
That's awesome.
It was
they are devout and loyal.
That's exactly it. And so again, but at the same time, if you've never experienced that, and then all of a sudden it's the first thing you have, right? I didn't handle it all that well. Now, that being said, the good news is when you go from hero to zero, you've got to learn how to handle things differently. And when I did come back, it was not as much that I wanted to play or I wanted to pursue that. It was to prove that I could get back. And once I did, then I could live the rest of my life. And I didn't ever have to get into that place. So when I was fortunate enough to share the stage with Colin Powell and Rudy Giuliani and a whole bunch of other names, what you find out is they're just people, and they're just people like you're just people.
That's
And
right.
so that's why the lesson, number one, persevering and coming back from it, learning the lessons through it, and then going, you know what, but I'm not going to be that person ever again. I'm going to be as good a person as I can be. And when you set that goal in place, all sorts of different decisions get made.
But what when you were the hero and you were feeling this incredible amount of kind of fame or whatever, did you know at that point in time you didn't like who you were, or was it when you lost it? And is that when it you
Yeah.
realized how you were being or how you were?
Yeah. I know you don't know what you don't know until you know it. And I never realized that you don't flip a switch overnight and change.
Yeah.
You know, you change gradually over time, and so you don't necessarily always recognize it. And when you're in that mode, people are cheering you, and you know, they want to hang out, right? And so that all happens. And the second I wasn't that starter, and the second I wasn't playing, they all disappeared.
Mm,
And all of a sudden you go, wow, I might want to think about this. And the only people who stuck around were the people that were just the really good friends
mhm,
that that you know, they kind of said, hey, you know, you're getting a little, you know, whatever. And I'm not going to suggest I was terrible,
mhm.
I, but it was not who I am. And and we all have, hopefully, those times. In the book I talk about them being defining moments. You know, they can be life-changing events, they can be defining moments if you use them as a demarcation point and say, okay, I made some mistakes, or I got, you know, a little uppity, or I did whatever. I read my own press clippings, you know, and all of a sudden you go, yeah, but not who I am.
Mhm.
Get back to who you are, you know. And the best part of that was really finding some good mentors and some people to emulate and go, you know what, I want to be remembered like that. That's what becomes, you know, far more important.
Right. You have helped so many people through coaching and being, all of these the trainer and, a speaker, an executive coach and all of these things. What point in your life did you shift into that career path?
Well, it's really funny. My dad worked for the same company for 46 years, from the time he was 17 till he's 63. So when I went to school, it was, what do? You go into corporate America because that's what my dad did, right? I mean, that was the model I saw.
Yeah.
And I was very fortunate. I rocketed to the top of the company that I was with. You know, youngest sales manager in history, youngest divisional manager in history, national sales trainer, youngest in history. And shocker, corporate America changed. You know, all of a sudden there were rules that were put upon me, and I didn't like it. It wasn't the rules that were put upon me. They asked me to do something that I vehemently disagreed with
Mhm.
for the good of the employee. And they had every right to ask me to do it. I had every right to say no. I just didn't have every right to say no and still work there.
Oh.
And so when they said, we need you to cut a head count and you have until Friday to do it, I called them and I said, I got your head count. And they said, good, is she gone? And I said, no, she's still here. I'm gone.
Oh.
And so again, they had every right to ask me. I had every right to say no. I just didn't have every right to say no and still be there. And so there are times where you have to stand on principle in life. Was it the greatest decision I've ever made? I don't know. Maybe it might have been for her, might not have been for me. But the reality is there are times where you have to make some hard decisions, and you've got to do the right thing at the right time, even though not everybody believes that's the right thing at the right time. And so when I decided to go into speaking, and years later, I had told a friend of mine, I said, "You run a seminar company. If you ever need a speaker, I'm in." He called me about 6 weeks before an event, and he said, "Were you serious about that?" I said, "Absolutely. If you got a spot for me, I'm there." He said, "You haven't even asked what it was." I said, "I don't care." And he said, "Not only do I have one spot, I have two." I said, "Awesome. I'll take them both if you'll give them to me." He said, "I'll give them to you both and I'll pay you for both." I said, "This is even better." He said, "You still haven't asked where it is." I said, "I don't care." He said, "It's in Toronto, August 28th, 2003. I said, "Awesome." He said, "You still don't understand, do you?" I said, "What?" He said, "You haven't heard of the SARS epidemic?" And I said, "I've heard of it." He said, "There's like 8,000 people that have dropped over dead because of SARS in Toronto."
Oh, shoot.
And I said, and he said, "The reason I have the two spots is I had two speakers cancel."
Oh.
And I said, "Well, if I want to be a professional speaker, I can either die of SARS or die on stage. Let's go." And
Oh.
that started. So I went, I spoke twice. Mark Victor Hansen and Jack Canfield were the keynotes to that event. They came to both of my talks. They walked up to me afterwards and they said, "Son, if you're not doing this professionally, you're robbing humanity. You're cheating humanity. In fact, you're being selfish."
Wow. You know what? You are good. Like, listening to you is so easy.
Well, thank you.
I'm like chill. I am a high strung person, but every time I am on a podcast with you and you speak, I'm just like, "Oh yeah." I mean, just like very calming, and you make really good points. I read 3,000 live events you've spoken at, correct?
Probably more than that actually, but yeah.
Over 3,000 live events. And so that started in 2003?
Yeah, it started in 2003. There was a period of time where I was doing about 288 talks a year.
You
I
were
left
traveling.
I left on Sunday, came back on Friday, and spoke 8 to 10 times a week. And you know, the only it's really funny. My speaking mentor, John Childers, an absolute amazing mentor. He said, "Scott, if you want to be a speaker, you know what you got to do." I said, "What, John?" He goes, "You got to speak."
Yeah.
And I said, "Okay, what's the secret to it?" He goes, "Speaking." And I said, "Well, what are you saying?" He goes, "Speak. Any place, anytime, anywhere, anybody who give you a platform, you speak." And John was full of that kind of wisdom. One of my favorites is he looked at me one day very seriously and he said, "Scott, if you want to do what I do what I do."
It's just so simple, right? And
It's
whatever you do over and over, I mean, you're going to get better at it. It's practice. And clearly there's no issues with your work ethic. I mean, you healed something the doctors didn't think you could heal and went and kicked football again. This is going to be a huge question. I mean, to be able to answer this, I don't know how you will. With having over 3,000, being a guest speaker over 3,000 times, can you remember one time that really stands out to you and why?
I can actually remember many,
Uh-huh.
which is I'm honored to be able to do that. But one, it actually turned out over 5 events. I was representing a product, and there was a young black man that came into the event. And afterwards, after I finished speaking, he said, "Mr. Scott, I so want to take advantage of this." And I said, "Awesome, let's get you started." And he goes, "Oh, I don't have the money to do it, but I really want to do this." And we sat and talked for a while. And I said, "We have all sorts of free things on our website. Here's a CD with some things. We'll be back in town in about 90 days. Would it be okay if we invited you back?" He said, "Would you make sure you do that?" "Yeah, we'll do that." 90 days later, he came walking in the room. I said, "Hey, Lionel." He goes, "Hey, Mr. Scott, how are you?" He said, "I'm ready to sit in again." He sat down, listened to the presentation, and afterwards, oh, Mr. Scott, that was better than last time. Well, thank you, Lionel. I appreciate that. I said, you ready to get started? He goes, oh, yes, sir, I am. Except I still don't have the money, but I've been saving.
Oh,
Well, we'll be back in 90 days. Same thing. We'll be back in 90 days. Same thing. Fifth time now. This is 15 months later. He walked into the back of the room and he said, Mr. Scott, I just want you to know you don't have to ask me the question. I brought my money. I'm ready.
oh,
And we were able to show him so much value over that time and give him so much encouragement to learn on his own. And that he finally had saved up the money to get the education and then put that education. It took 15 months for that encouragement to get him to that next level. And yet, if that's what it takes, God's plan and timing is perfect. That's what it takes.
oh, amen to that. That's for sure. That is a great story because of all the things that you just said, but to encourage other people to understand sometimes things don't just happen right now. And if you really want something, you can just, I think Lynn, thank you, Lynn. Was that Lionel?
No, that was Lou Ferrigno. That was the Hulk.
Oh, yes, that's the Hulkster. Oh my gosh. So
Yeah.
what was this about? What was this?
We were at an event. That was backstage in an event in Los Angeles. I've been very blessed. I've shared the stage with virtually every name that everybody knows. They may or may not know mine. That's okay. That wasn't my task. My task was to represent the product that I was there for. But which the opportunity comes when you're sitting with those folks and you get to ask questions. One of the most valuable, what just popped in, one of the most valuable experiences and stories ever was Zig Ziglar. We were backstage, Zig Ziglar, Les Brown, and Les goes up to Zig and says, Zig, I don't get it. Every city, I change my stories. I get it to be fresh. I do all this different stuff. And every city we go to, you tell the exact same stuff all the time. You never change anything. What gives? And Zig just looked at him and said, Les, two things. Number one, the people in this city have never heard this message, and they need to. And more importantly, I teach truth, and truth never changes.
Oh, that's powerful.
It's one of those where truth, there's Nick, such a good guy. Talk about a guy, life with no limits, born with no arms, no legs, and has preached to 3 billion people. That's amazing.
That is amazing. I'm very distracted by still thinking about what you said. You have shared a stage with many people that people will know their name, but may not know yours, and that's okay. You're there for the product that you're presenting.
Well, I'm there. If you want to get asked back, this is a writer downer. This is one of those things you write down as a speaker if you want to get asked back. Number one is the promoter. Number two is the audience. At best, you're third. And quite frankly, it's God, promoter, audience, you're fourth.
Mm.
And when you understand that and you make sure that everybody, gets their due and you do the task that you're there for, that's why people go, are you available? Can you come back? Absolutely. It's a blast. It's always a blast. It's always fun.
Mm.
You can't control who's there. You can't control how many's there. There's so many different things that you can't control. The only thing you can control is your intention, your desire, how you treat people with respect, honor, and dignity, and leave them better for the interaction after the fact.
Mm. You do that too.
Well, thank you.
And, I had talked to you about, this interview and you being on here, and I watched a YouTube video of you talking about something that had happened to you when you were traveling and speaking engagement and whatever. And I really feel like I want you to share this because this is
Yeah.
yet another challenge, another, I don't know, something that happened to you that you overcame. You know, it started, I mean, I don't know other things possibly that you can share, but I do know I was
Uh,
watching that YouTube video, I was crying. I was like going through it with you. I Can you take us a little bit through
yeah,
that?
absolutely. Absolutely. I was going to a speaking event. It was a super cold day here in Dallas, which doesn't happen all that much. I was going to a speaking event. I balanced a box of books on my knee. I went to the back of my SUV. I flipped open the back hatch of the SUV. I ducked underneath it so I could put the box. Well, as fast as I threw that back hatch up, it came down and hit me in the back of the head. Well, unbeknownst to me, I mean, it cold cocked me, about knocked me out, but I had to go
Mm,
speak. So I went to speak with a big headache. Well, that headache didn't go away for 8 days, and actually didn't go away for longer than that. But um, as a guy, you know exactly what I did about it. Nothing.
nothing.
In fact, 4 days into it, I got on an airplane and flew out to LA to do an infomercial shoot, which the pressure going up and down about blew my head off. Well, again, I didn't know other than I'd been hit in the back of the head. Well, we were off that Sunday. We shot all day Saturday, and we were going to shoot again on Monday. So we took Sunday off. We were on top of the Dream Center in LA, taking a picture up on top. Amazing project with Matthew Barnett and the Angelus Temple. And it was like an ice pick going through my right eye. And all of a sudden it was like, oh my goodness. And we went to Bubba Gump's at Universal City Walk for lunch, or we were heading there. I took about 10 steps off the shuttle and my legs stopped. And I looked down at my right foot and I said, move, and it didn't move. And I looked at my left foot and said, move, and it didn't move. And I was standing on two tingling stumps from above the knee down. And I started becoming disoriented. And fortunately, there was a railing behind me. I was walking with 7 people, 3 of them doctors. Coincidence? I think not. And one of them slid a chair underneath me as I started to fall back. I fell back into the chair. One of the doctors came running up and he said, what's your phone number? I said, 817-239. Why would you ask me that now? Can't you see I can't walk? And he said, oh, no reason. Well, I was cold. I was gray. I was clammy. I was sweating profusely. I was about to projectile vomit. All five signs of a stroke. I was right in the middle of a full-blown cerebellar stroke. And if you understand the cerebellum, it's responsible for speech, memory, fine motor skills, walking, talking, vertigo. By the grace of God, I come out like this. So I went into the emergency room. They misdiagnosed me with a major migraine, sent me back to my room. The pain got so bad, I cried out, God, help. And I heard an audible drop to your knees. And I slid out of bed and I had my elbows up on bed. And I said, Lord, I've been teaching your plan and timing is perfect for the last couple of years now. I do not pretend to understand this plan or this timing. I do not believe your plan is to call me home. I do not believe your plan is to maim me or disable me. So I'm choosing to believe your plan is to wake me up. Duly noted. You got my attention. And I'm supposed to use this event to serve and save myself and others physically and spiritually for the rest of my life. And if that's your will for my life, I ask for your wisdom and guidance going forward so I implement that appropriately. And if that's not your will for my life, I just want you to know whatever you got for me, I'm good with.
Mm.
I went to climb back into bed and I didn't get into bed. I climbed on a cloud. Total peace, zero pain, bam, straight asleep. Got up the next day, went on set, shot 3 TV shows, 53 minutes, 18 minutes, 14 minutes. Went to a neurologist, did an MRI, read it the next day. His first words, get your ass to the hospital, check into ICU, you've had a stroke.
Mm.
and I spent the next 6 days in intensive care. And what I heard consistently from the doctors and the team was, we don't understand why you're alive. And when you hear that long enough, it irritates you. And I finally looked at him and I said, sorry to disappoint you. I've always been an overachiever. I live. And they said, you're kind of a smartass. And I said, well, I've got this all figured out. And they said, okay, what is it? I said, it's obvious. It's God's grace, mercy, and favor on my life. They said, well, that's as good an answer as we got. And they walked out.
Wow.
So that video you saw was 27 days after that.
Wow.
And so again, I just want to carry it that when you live through something like that, now you kind of search and seek, God, what do you got for me? And my prayer for the longest time was, God, use me.
Yeah.
I'm here. And I wasn't hearing anything. And I was back out on the road with a great speaker and evangelist, Krish Dunham. And I said, Krish, I don't get it. I've been praying, God, use me. And I'm not hearing anything. And he just kind of chuckled. And I said, did I say something funny? He said, yeah, wrong prayer. I said, what do you mean wrong prayer? He said, Scott, the prayer isn't God use me. The prayer is God make me usable.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
And it was like, ah. And so that's been the prayer ever since.
Wow.
God make me usable. Allow me to do what you have for me, whatever that might be. And we tend to want to make these things happen on our own. Trust me, I'm a recovering type A, but the fact is, his plan and timing is perfect, and all things work together for your good. That doesn't say all things are good. It says all things work together for your good.
Yeah.
So the reality is, I could have believed that God's plan and timing is perfect, or I shouldn't have had the stroke. But I can't believe both at the same time. You have to believe one or the other. And so I've chosen to believe that God's plan and timing is perfect and all things work together for my good. And as a person who struggles with trying to make it happen himself and trying to figure it out, there was something when I came across that video the other day, I felt like I needed to send it to you. I don't know why.
And you have no idea the timing of that, what that meant to me and how much. And I said, when I responded to you, and I cried through it. I was inspired by it. And I thought, this is a God thing.
Yeah.
This is a God thing that out of the blue, you send me that. And I watched it, and it was on a day where I really needed it. And another thing that you mentioned inside of that video was Hebrews 11:1. And I am not good at quoting scripture. My sister who's watching is probably loving this because she can really, really well. I'm not that good at that, but I looked it up because I'm like, what is that again? What's Hebrew 1? And I was like, oh my gosh. Wow. I had just that morning dropped the fear and took a first step towards something I've been wanting to do for a long time. And just the delivery of your message that day during a time where I needed it, it was just so empowering and powerful. So I just thought, wow.
Thank you. Well, one of the things that I shared, and somebody else watched that video today, and they called me and they said, and they've been a preacher for a long, long time. They said they've never made the distinction of Hebrews 11:1 saying that faith is confidence in the unseen and assurance of the unknown. The distinction that I made in that talk was that same definition fits to two words. Fear is confidence in the unseen, assurance of the unknown. Faith is confidence in the unseen, assurance of the unknown. But the only place it's verified and validated is in the Bible, Hebrews 11:1, that definition is faith. So therefore, there's no place for fear.
Fear.
In fact, 365 times in the Bible, it says, do not be afraid. It's a daily reminder to live fearlessly.
I did a TikTok about that, about that in the Bible, it mentions not to fear, fear not, 365 times. I did a TikTok about that. I'm like, so that's a little reminder every day to not fear. But I don't always take my own advice, or obviously Hebrew. But here's the other crazy thing. The new business I'm starting is called Studio 11 style. And it was Hebrews 11:1. And I'm like, oh, it's just,
yeah.
That's my trade name. I'm just like,
those are the God winks that happen throughout time, and one of the things that I suggest in the book is to keep an evidence journal of those things, whether it be your prayers, whether it be your intentions, whether it be the things that you put out into the world, that when they happen, make sure you write them down. That, 6 months ago, I thought, I'll give you probably now 3.5 months ago, I saw a promotion from a seminar company, and I went, man, it would really be awesome to be one of their speakers. And 3 weeks later, a guy I hadn't talked to in 10 years texted me and said, hey, would you be interested in going back out on the road for that company?
And the answer was a resounding yes.
I am looking forward to it. So the point is that that's evidence that when we put out our intentions, when we put out goodness in the world, that, when I sent an unsolicited video to a friend, it happened to hit at just the right day and time.
I wrote it down too. I wrote that down on that day. I wrote in my journal that you sent me a video after I had done what I did, and that this was a God thing because this happened right at the same time. And I don't write everything down, but I'm going to be better at that. I just had been writing about what I was doing. Then you sent me the video. So I opened up my journal back up and I added to it. And then this happened, because it's such blessings that we need to be grateful for and say, thank you, God, for these, and, go. I want to hear you.
No, I was just going to say the biggest thing, though, is listening, recognizing, and acknowledging. So as an example, let's go back to the SARS story. I didn't know Jack Canfield, Mark Victor Hansen were going to be there. I didn't know those guys at all at that time. And yet they came in and said, you need to be doing this professionally. And when I said, Jack said, why aren't you doing this? I said, because I got a job. He goes, that's a horrible answer. You can tell me any other reason other than you have a job. I said, well, I don't have an answer for you. He said, what do you think you need to do? I said, I guess I need to be a professional speaker. And I literally went and quit my job. Wow. I had nothing set. It was, again, and I'm not going to suggest that's the technique. I'm just going to say that's what happened. But because of that, I went to Victor Hansen invited me to his mega speaking event, which is where I heard Cynthia Kersey make an impassioned plea to support Habitat for Humanity. Well, when I couldn't write the check to do it, my friend on one side said, I'm going to write a check. Friend on the other side said, I'm going to write a check. They both looked at me and said, what are you going to do? I said, I can't. I don't have any discretionary income, but I'm going to do something. They said, what? I said, I got no clue, but I'll figure it out. Well, that was the genesis of my first book, Talking with Giants. I couldn't write a check, but what I did is I gathered the people I know, Jack Canfield, Mark Victor Hansen, Cynthia Kersey, Harv Eker, the CEO of Kimberly-Clark. and I did stories on them and the charities that they supported. And there's 21 charities supported by that book since that day in 2005.
You didn't write a check, but you wrote a book.
That's right.
Way to go.
So
That's Scott Schilling, people.
so but the point was, I could tell other people's stories. Napoleon Hill was not a great writer or even a great thinker. What he was a great reporter.
Mm.
And so the reality is, he was teaching lessons that Carnegie taught him, that Firestone taught him, that other people. Now he became great over time,
Yeah.
but that's not where it originated, right? So anybody who's got a desire to make a positive impact in the world can do that. But it doesn't have to be the way you think it does. I couldn't write a check if I didn't have any money, but I could gather my friends, write stories that bragged on them, bragged on their philanthropic cause, which now then, because I was helping them, they wanted to help me. We created a book that then was able to tell those stories. Mm. Generosity builds prosperity, not the other way around. You don't prosper, then give. You give, then prosper. You don't give to prosper, but it is the natural byproduct of giving.
And that's a great lesson too. I mean, not a lesson, but it is
a lesson.
I guess it is. But I feel like, do you have? I have another question about when you grew up. Were you raised in church and a believer in a faithful family?
I grew up going to church.
Okay.
As I got older, church told me that I might have had a little too much the night before. It was not classified the same way. I mean, was I a believer? Yes. But did I get baptized again in 1992 when I was significantly older? Yes. We have these ways of going through our spiritual walk and through everything. And we actually, on Lynn and Scott's show last night, we had this conversation about faith. I believe that there's something beyond us, or sometimes within us, right?
There we are.
That's right. We're all there. So sometimes within us, right? That's that higher power, that spiritual nature. It is not, in my opinion, it is my job to be a living example of my beliefs. It is not my job to get you to believe what I believe. That's his job. Ooh. That's his job. My job is to be a living example to show you what is available. And if you want it, you can have it. And it's funny, I did this on stage one day. I said, as a sales trainer, as a sales guy, I don't ever want to sell you anything, but I always want you to buy a lot from me. And I said, now, so it's up to me to create that environment for you to want what I have. And I said, you know what? You all in the audience, a lot of you know me, and I've been on this spiritual walk, but this works with spirituality too. Let me prove it to you. So here I am on stage in front of hundreds of people. I go, have you heard about Jesus? I said, that's selling. Nobody likes it. Yeah. Stop it.
Yeah.
Or, hey, when I had this really significant event in my life and the pain got so bad, I cried out, God help. Mm-hmm. And I heard an audible drop to your knees. And I prayed. Mm. And when I was done, I climbed up on a cloud. Never had it happen before, never had it happen since. But I had a peace that I've never known. If you'd like to feel that, I'd love to talk to you about it.
That is beautiful, Scott. And there's a sense of, this is what I feel from you without you having to say that too. I think that as I've gotten to know you through the Lynn and Scott show, just by, I wasn't on last night about the faith, that faith topic. It's, you are a living example of a faithful man without preaching it. necessarily. It's just who you are, and the things that you say when we're on topic, just it feels right and good. And
Well, thank
so,
you.
and as I learned more about you in preparation for the show, and thank God I had you on because I learned so much. I was like, oh my gosh, he is such a man of God, and that's what I think I feel from you. Just it's incredible. I just appreciate you so much, and your knowledge. And I mean, we could stay on here for 2 hours and we wouldn't even scratch the surface of. That's why you guys need to watch Tuesday nights, because he's on every Tuesday night. You can watch it live on Facebook or YouTube, all of the places that I'm on, the Len and Scott Show. And as we all see it, you guys just turn on, like this podcast, you guys can just turn it on and listen. You don't have to actually watch it. It's just listen. I know
Yeah.
people can't
Well,
always sit and watch.
we have such a brilliant group. Rex Sykes is brilliant. Barry
Totally.
Shelby is brilliant.
Oh,
John Horton's been on lately. You have been on.
yeah.
We there's just so many wonderful, learned people that have committed to learn and keep on learning, and that's why it all becomes fun. The reality is, I don't know that I'm the most spiritual guy on the planet. Hey, Lynn, I don't know that I'm the most spiritual guy on the planet, but I work to do better every day, and I work to do the right things. It's so funny. Back to that video, that friend who watched it today, she said, out of that whole thing, what really got me? And I said, what's that? She said, when you smiled at that woman in the grocery store, and she asked you, why did you smile at me? And your answer was, because I could.
Because I could.
And that, how much good could we do in this world if we just, just smiled, just were kind, give people a hand up, not a handout, give them their dignity. Giving people stuff doesn't allow them to earn their own dignity. They would like to do that,
I
actually.
love that too. Give them a hand up, not a hand out. Let them have their dignity. That's amazing.
Well, thank you.
That's a good little nugget for parents too, with their children.
It really is, because we're going through a time, and we're seeing the differences in generations. I'm sure our parents said the same thing.
Yeah.
But they were wrong. That's the difference.
Of course.
I think
we're right now.
We're right. We're seeing greater differences in the generations today than I think we've ever seen.
Yeah.
Yeah, we might have been rabble rousers and all that back then. But today, here's the big difference. At least my generation, I was trained to gather knowledge and hold it. And unfortunately, the millennials and younger have now been trained to know where to find knowledge, not to hold knowledge. And the difference that makes is their ability to use critical thinking when it's necessary. And so now, I know of a millennial that went to a location that was 5 minutes from where she worked for 4 years. And on the way to that location, she put on her GPS. Oh. And the question was asked, well, if you worked 5 minutes from there, why are you having? Well, it's not like I remember how to get there.
We rely on things. I mean, even I know that I even do that sometimes too. You just think, well, I'll just look it up, or I'll just have them guide me.
Well, and so I think that's the biggest thing. And what that translates to, it's like, okay, so what's the big deal? Well, the big deal is what happens if the battery runs out?
Oh my gosh.
What happens if it's not in your hand? All of a sudden, the ability to critically think, analyze, and troubleshoot isn't there, because you know what? You haven't practiced it.
Oh my gosh, Scott, I was in LA. I had already checked out of my hotel. I had some time to spare. My phone was dying. I was having to get a hold of Mary Tabor, who lives. I was going to meet up with Mary Tabor. I didn't know her address, so I had just relied on, oh, when I jump in the
Mhm.
Uber, or when I call for my Uber, I'll go ahead and plug that in. Um, I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I got to be a figure outer. Like, what would I have done in the 80s without my cell phone? And it was just, I was kind of laughing at myself. I found a place I could charge my phone. I truly had to get a hold of her to get the address to be able to put it into the Uber to get to her place. But I thought, oh my gosh, like back in the day, we didn't have cell phones and GPS and all that. We would use a payphone, call for a taxi, have to know where you're going. And I always laugh with my kids because I'm like, you guys act so smart, but take the cell phones away for like an hour and see how well you can like be a figure outer. Like you
Well,
use critical
exactly.
thinking. I call it a figure outer.
Well, but again, think the next extension down. If all people are doing is finding out knowledge, that means they're finding out what's published. Is everything that's published true?
Mm,
Next problem.
yeah.
Because again, if you don't have the critical thinking to think through some of this stuff, if it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's probably a freaking duck.
Right.
But if all of a sudden it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, and there's a picture of a chicken, somebody's going to go, "Oh, that's a chicken."
It shows it right
Right?
there.
Because that's exactly it. Oh, it's on the internet. It's got to be true.
It's gotta be
And
true.
so again, that's why, quite frankly, I want to keep on learning. But it's why I'm so passionate about sharing what I've learned from the 19 mentors that I've written checks to over my career. I want to make sure that I pass down the knowledge that I gained from them. My statement to them when we connected was, give me everything you got, and my commitment is I won't keep it. I'll share it with my students. I'll share it with anybody who wants to learn it. I will transmit your knowledge and credit you doing it. So that's again, I think
I love that.
some of us more mature, that's code word for old or older, some of us more mature folks still have an opportunity to impart the things that we've learned. And we have to get tough and have people say, "Oh, old guy, you don't know what you're talking about." Okay, that's your opinion. I respect your opinion. I don't agree with it, but I respect it.
Yeah.
And we still have the desire to impart the lessons learned. And one of the things that I wrote down, in case we got to it, the keys to perseverance in any situation. If you really want to learn to be a critical thinker, or really want to learn how to utilize whatever that situation is, good, bad, or indifferent, ask 5 questions. What's the lesson? What's my gift? What did I do to create this? How would I modify it next time to make it better? How is this going to serve me the rest of my life? So let's go back to my stroke. I get hit in the back of the head. My car attacks me. First of all, don't ever keep a car that attacks you. But what's the lesson? The lesson is, if you've got a headache for 8 days, it feels like your head's going to blow off, go to the doctor.
Right.
What's the gift? Even with my lack of going to the doctor, I lived through it and I came through with no deficiencies. How did I create it? Well, I was in a hurry. I balanced the box. I threw it up quick. I was careless. How would I do it again? Sell the car. Don't keep a car that attacks you. No, the thing is, next time you take more time. How's this going to serve me the rest of my life? Well, in that video that you saw, that was 27 days after my stroke, and I was telling people that day about the event. A gentleman walked up to me right after that talk, and he said, "I just want to thank you." And I said, "For what?" He said, "I'm going right now to the doctor. I've had a headache for 12 days. You just
Oh,
scared the hell out of me."
oh, wow.
And he went to the doctor to make sure he was okay.
Yeah.
So this is how we take these events. Again, it's not the events in our life that determine our outcomes. It's our event plus our response to that. What do we do with it? Somebody calls you a name, or you're a racist, or you're a this. It's not what somebody says to you that counts. It's what you say to you after they stop talking.
Mm,
So
boom.
the
Oh,
reality,
that's huge.
the reality is we have the opportunity to share, to take a risk of sending a friend a video, to claim your faith, whatever that might be. Again, not my job to I'm not judge and jury. That ain't my job. My job is to live what I believe. I believe your job is to live what you believe. If we believe different things, God bless us both.
Right.
That's cool. I believe we should respect, honor, and dignify everybody else on the planet. We should respect is the way we treat them. Honor is how we lift them up. Dignity is what we both experience once we've done that well. So when we take this and we put it in play and we really treat people with the respect they're due, honor them for our similarities and our
And
differences,
differences.
then the dignity shows up. Then we have civilization. Novel concept, right? We're civil with
We're
each other.
civil with one another. We need a whole lot more of that. We need to work on that. Maybe we'll just keep this on a loop. What you just said on a loop. I'll just keep posting it.
That'd be great. I mean, I thank you for this opportunity. I truly do. I never know what's going to come out of my face when, stuff just shows up.
Though, the thing is, what happens is you're genuine and true. And just like what Zig Ziglar said to behind stage to your friend who was a speaker that changed it up all the time, people need the truth, and the truth,
sets you free.
it sets you free. So what comes out of your mouth are truth statements that can help people. And so I'm glad that everything that came out of your face tonight is super helpful and the truth. That's why it's so easy to listen to you. And there's so many things that you've said along the way just during this podcast that I'm going to go back and write those quotes down. And I know some of them.
Yeah, let me leave you with one last zigism.
Okay.
So when we were doing a lunch and we did a hostage exchange, I signed one of my books to him. He signed his last book to me. And I got to ask him about when did he create the statement, you can have everything in life you want when you help enough other people get what they want. He said, Scott, I didn't create that. My mama taught me that when I was 5. It was part of my christening when I was 12. I asked, Zig, can I share that? He said, I'd be honored. And so we sat and we talked, and he's such a great man. And as we finished up, he said, Scott, can I leave you with one last thing? I said, Zig, I'd be honored. He said, if you're ever discouraged or facing a really hard time in your life and you don't know what to do, always remember, at least at one point, even Moses was a basket case.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
I said, Zig, you still got it.
Oh my
He said,
gosh.
I always will.
Oh my gosh. I use his quotes all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, like with different posts and stuff, it's so inspiring. I just love it.
He, such a great man. And if there's anybody to emulate, he's certainly a great one. There are many, Jim Rohn was an amazing guy. So many amazing people. Again, hopefully we can leave a positive imprint for others. Someday somebody will look back and go, that Debbie, she's really freaking awesome.
Aww.
So
well, let's end it with this though, because we've already talked about what you have found, and you've inspired many people, I am certain, with what you have found to help us find it too. But to end this, I want to know then, since you brought this up, what will you want to be known for?
I just want to be known as the best person I could possibly be, that served as many people as he possibly could to leave a positive impact on the planet.
Yeah. Well, Scott, I can, yes. We all, anyone that knows you knows that's exactly how you're going to be remembered. And as you're talking and the tenderness that comes out, I'm like, you are rough, you are tough, and you are tender. You're like this whole, like, athlete, football, And then you start talking about God and your experiences and other people that you've inspired, and you see the motion. It's so good. It's just good. Rough, tough, and tender. That's a whole Scott Schilling for you. I just adore you, and I'm so grateful that you've blessed us with being on this show. I feel extremely special because you are, yeah, and raw. My sister said raw. Yeah. Raw but polished. I mean, we're just
Well, if there's any time that I can do anything for anybody, quite frankly, reach out to me. I'm not hard to find. Again, it's fun to create the relationships and just learn how to serve people and do. Thank you, Barry, for being here.
Yes, Barry.
You know, how again, it's the outward overture of not everybody will take you up when you work to serve them or learn from them or learn of them or things like that. That you can't control. The only thing you can control is that outbound desire to meet as many people as you can, impart as much as you can, do as much good as you can. You know, if you do that consistently enough, you tend to persevere.
I love it, Scott. I love it so much. I so appreciate you, and I think it's a wrap, but I don't want it to be. So we just need to have everybody come on over. Red Rover, bring everybody over
right.
Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern. Come on over and see. You can see Scott, Barry, Rex, Lynn, Scott. Sometimes Steve Rizzo's on. Sometimes I make the show. I need to get better at getting there. But I always watch it no matter what, even when I'm not on. But
It's always a great show.
and
sometimes it even stays on topic.
And sometimes it doesn't, and that's okay. Sometimes it's even more fun.
Sometimes it goes a little wild, but that's okay.
A little haywire. All right. Well, anyway, thank you for being with us, Scott. You have warmed my heart and just inspired me all over again, like you do every time I hear you speak. And with that, you guys, I will see you again next week, same time, different guest. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate all of you.
Thanks, y'all.
That floats around me, keeping